I started by reading each brief and narrowed them down to 3 based on interest. I analysed all 3 and decided on the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty brief. The brief called for a hopeful symbol to unify global efforts against fossil fuels. It needed to engage citizens, align with the treaty's visual identity, and resonate with today's activism culture. This guided my entire design process. Next, I researched the treaty's mission, target audience, and existing symbols. I didn't find much information on specific youth involvement, but decided to keep them in mind anyway: passionate, young, and digitally active. I also explored famous symbols like the peace sign, noting their effectiveness, simplicity, and universality. This research shaped my goal: create a symbol that's both meaningful and easy to adopt. I wrote a report to summarise what I learned from my research, then began starting to create the symbol. I mind mapped ideas around renewable energy and unity, exploring symbols like wind turbines and trees. Then I created sketches for ways to represent these ideas, and another round of sketches combining the symbols to create new meaning. There were 3 clear symbols at this stage which embodied both hope and action. I researched and audited the treaty's visual identity, noting its blue colour scheme, but more importantly, the teal, green and orange palette implemented on the Instagram, which I adopted for brand consistency. I also reviewed Greenpeace and XR designs, focusing on their bold, activist-driven aesthetics. I found there was a commonality amongst activist brands of using monochromatic photography for promotional material, and so this is something I made a note of and later became central to the project. Out of the 3 symbol sketches I came up with previously, I took 2 of them forward and refined them. I came up with an initial set of ideas for the sprout in the sun and rooted wind turbine ideas. Deciding that the rooted wind turbine was the most visually striking, I started coming up with ways to make the head of the wind turbine look like a sunflower, to include some of the hope messaging and symbolism of the 3rd sketch idea that I didn't take forward. I took the wind turbine idea forward for 2 rounds of further refinement and experimentation. The first was the shape of the propellers, then the rotation of them to ensure maximum visibility, and the line widths around the design, also to make sure it's as visible as possible at smaller sizes. The second round of experimentation was for colour. I tried hard to find a solution that incorporated the treaty website's orange colour by trying to balance it with different green colours to soften it, but it was just too red and felt too urgent. At this stage, I also generated a poster/Instagram post based on what I had learned so far about the industry trend for monochromatic photography. The next step was to research designers and make variations based on their style. The first artist I looked into was David Bensky, who I chose for his ability to create emotive designs. I pinpointed 3 key elements that add emotion to his designs that I could utilise: high contrast, bold typography, and textured elements. The variation focused on these elements, more in line with Extinction Rebellion's visual style. I did this with a more heavily contrasted background, an altered colour scheme that also focuses on higher contrast, and a more bold typographic element. Next, I researched Froyo Tam's visual style because I saw in it a certain type of optimism that I wanted to try to tap into. Her work is optimistic, with vibrant graphical elements and tech-driven optimism. For this variation, I did away with background photography and instead included a simple gradient background with the symbol looking like a piece of glass with the sun reflecting off it. I think this is a very hopeful and successful standalone poster. Lastly, I researched John Coutinho for his captivating designs and ability to capitalise on the cultural zeitgeist. His work features a hand-drawn, gritty, nostalgic aesthetic, bold lettering, and minimal monochromatic elements with pops of colour. Next was a series of reflections, firstly identifying the parts of the brief that are non-negotiable. The second reflection was on the visual style of the presentation and how I could test these aspects. I created a table with a combination of elements and styles based on my previous designs, my research and the brief. The looks into the artists David Bensky and Froyo Tam were a good exploration in a maximalist, activist-driven style versus minimalism, and while the activist-driven style was effective, it lacked the hope and edged into more alarmist messaging,